Morning. Glad to see y'all back at Coffee Station. Remember the other day I told you I was going to go out and check on Silas's mule? Y'all thought I was kidding, didn't you? Man, it ain't any better. This is Delilah. And Delilah is 27 years old. And we were coming out here, and the old folks would take, you can see this little sore on her right here on her leg, and right here. You can see where I've rubbed some of this stuff on her. And then she's gotten down and wallered. They would take sulfur and some kind of animal fat, like some grease, usually hog fat, and mix that sulfur in it, and then smear that on little cuts and nicks, and it would heal stuff up. Now the modern equivalent of that is furazin, and that's basically the same stuff, except it's a modern mixture. It's like about the consistency of petroleum jelly. But anyway, Delilah likes to have her tail scratched, among other places. Delilah likes to have her belly scratched. Here's another one of those little spots. She likes to have her belly scratched, as you can see there. She likes to have her jaws scratched. She especially likes her belly rubbed and scratched on. She likes her ears scratched. Delilah likes to be scratched all over, and she thinks that the reason God made humans is to scratch her. Delilah would have you stand here and scratch her somewhere all day long, but we had a question about firearms the other day, so we're going to go in here and answer the question. It was about percussion and flint firearms, and which came first and how they work. So we're going to go in here and show you, try to get a close-up and show you the difference between percussion and flint, and give you just a brief history of the transition from flint to percussion. But y'all come on in here. I'll go get Delilah a peppermint, and I'll be right in behind you. Y'all go ahead on. One of the I don't know if you exactly call it a question, but people were asking about firearms, because we were telling them here a while back, different goods you could get here. You could get percussion or flint. And some folks said, what's percussion, what's flint? We're going to cover percussion briefly. The evolution of the percussion cap was about a 25-30 year time span. And unless you have some illustrations or photographs, I could talk for an hour to you and it'd be clear as mud. The percussion cap as we know it hit the market in 1824. And this is where the cap guns that we all grew up with, this was the forerunner to those. And by 1840, now these hit the market in 1824. Fulminate of mercury was what they were then. Shape is still the same, different chemical composition these days. These were very much less affected by damp, weather, and dew. They are faster to fire. Supposedly, from the time you pull the trigger till the time the gun goes off with a percussion cap is 7/10 of a second faster than with flint. By 1840, there were 15 different size percussion caps on the market, and basically you load these. It was rather expensive to convert flint to percussion, but it was done. You load these down the barrel, just like any other firearm at the time. Put the patch and on top of your powder, and if it's a rifle barrel, you put your bullet in. If it's a smooth bore, you pour whatever you're going to shoot down the barrel. And for percussion, a little hollow prong here. Now this one's all rusted out. It's it's actually almost 40 years old. The little hollow prong, you take your little percussion cap and put it on, seat it on here. And this one has been dry fired by the public so much that the percussion cap won't seat really, really well. But you seat your percussion cap on there and you carry it around like this, or half cocked. Usually you'd carry it around with a hammer on it. And when you got ready to shoot it, you would, and that was why you want it to seat very well. And that little flash created by the percussion, that hammer hitting that, the little flash goes through the hollow prong and ignites the powder that you poured down the barrel. And that is percussion. And like I said, it was, by the time the American Civil War rolled around, this was what most of both armies were using. Early on, I think there were a few Confederate units that were using flint, but by the time the whole shindig was over, it was, both sides were using percussion almost exclusively. So now we're going to take you over here and show you how to, the actual sequence of loading and shooting a flintlock. And like I said, the only difference is the lock, the means of creating the ignition. And so we'll put this on so we can walk out here in the yard and show you how to do this. Now, we're not trying for a speed record here. We're just trying to illustrate the thing. The time it took to load these with a smooth bore during, I think, the American Revolution, supposedly the best army in the world was the British Army, and they, I think, counting the round that was already in the weapon, if they could discharge that and 3 others in a minute, that was about as fast as you were going to get. Now with a rifle, you're not going to go nearly that fast because of the rifling. You've all heard lock, stock, and barrel, and some of you guys are going to be familiar with this, and others this will be new, but lock, stock, and barrel meaning the whole thing. This is the lock, this is the stock, and this is the barrel. So lock, stock, and barrel meaning in its entirety, the whole thing. Don't go off half-cocked. Here in a little bit we'll show you how you operate this thing. But after you got one of these loaded, you would cock it to half-cock and prime the pan. We'll show you that in a minute. And if you pull the trigger hard enough to make this gun go off from the half-cocked position, you usually tear up the shear or the mainspring. You'll mess the insides of it up. So don't go off half-cocked. Be sure that you're ready to start something before you actually start it. The flash in the pan. Again, we're going to show you what they're talking about here, but when you, if you had damp weather or really humid weather, especially if you had damp, rainy weather for several days, the powder you poured down the barrel is apt to draw moisture. And this powder that you put in the pan is almost always fresh, because if it's not, you can just flip it out with your fingers and pour fresh powder in it, and so this would almost always go off. And the idea is, and we'll show you here in a minute, this rock will hit this frizzen, and the sparks will drop into this pan of powder and ignite and burn through the hole in the barrel, and that will ignite the powder you poured down the barrel. So flash in the pan, this would almost always go off. Flash in the pan being somebody that was off to a good start and no follow-through. Now, usually in the movies, you'll see these guys pouring powder down the barrel. Unless it was literally a life and death situation, you're not going to do that, because gunpowder does not, black powder anyway, does not burn. You know, in the movies, you'll see it going, you know, when it goes along here. That's not how it works. It goes zip, boom. And so if you have shot a round out of this weapon, or any other that was this type of weapon, if you attempt to pour powder down that barrel and there happens to be a spark left over from the previous round, that powder will ignite back up that barrel and blow off your fingers or your hand. So you don't, unless it was literally life and death, you did not pour powder down the barrel. You would measure it out. And another reason that you would measure it out was because each rifle is different. And those guys that, you know, were out here in the 30s, And even the long hunters before in the 1700s, those guys lived with a gun in their hand from the time they were very young. They knew what a gun would do on a hot, humid day like today, on a cold, wet day, or just a cold, frigid, dry day. Whatever the weather conditions were, those guys knew what that gun was going to do, and they would adjust their powder accordingly. But usually every rifle has a load that it likes the best, that it shoots the most accurate with. And this one we just put 50 grains in it. Now, we're not going to actually load a live round because the city of Lawton takes a dim view of firing live rounds in the city. But you'd take the bullet and you'd take a little patch. You'd usually cut these out beforehand and carry them with you. They would usually be greased with whatever you could find, but a lot of times bear grease was a favorite. There's all kinds of different homemade formulas. Everybody swears theirs is the best. And you're going to take this and cram it down here. And the reason for the patch on this is because that gives you a better seal, so you get more benefit of that gunpowder exploding. You get more benefit from those gases. And so you would take, now we're not going to do that, we're just going to stuff some paper down in it, but you take and put a patch and a ball and shove it down the barrel. And this paper is being a little ornery. Another little thing, when you're doing this, you don't grab this up here. You don't grab this ramrod, then it was called a wiping stick or a rifle stick. You don't grab it up here, because if you don't have that lined up exactly straight, that will torque that shaft of this rod. It will splinter, and it is apt to poke through your hand. So you take little short strokes and you shove this down and make sure it's tamped in good. And pull it back half-cocked. And I was trying this left-handed, should have maintained it with my right, because you pour this little trough full of gunpowder, and I don't know if you can see the little hole in the side of the barrel there. Can you see that? And that is called your touch hole. And so you pour your pan full of powder, and we're going to up. And got too much, but that's all right. Better too much than not enough in most instances. And then, like I said, you're going to carry this at half-cocked, and when you get ready to shoot it, we're going to shoot it at this little stump, simply because it's a piece of paper wadding. And that is the sequence for firing a flint weapon. That is pretty compact, condensed version, if you will, of percussion and flint. Gives you some idea of how these things operated. The black powder is very corrosive, and so I'm going to go in here and clean this gun. You cleaned it as often as needed, and usually if you shot it once or 24 times in a day, you needed to clean it. So I'm fixing to go in here and clean this little jewel up. Y'all can go around here and visit with Silas if you want. Whatever you do before you leave, be sure to scratch Delilah, because you know where she likes to be scratched. We'll see you guys the next time. Thank you.